Hello everyone, welcome back to this collaboration channel, Movie Reviewers 100. We've had a few reviews for scary movies earlier in accordance with Halloween week, or horror week, and I'd like to add a couple to that list. If you haven't checked out the other guys' videos already, please do so. One of them, I think Ray reviewed Ravenous, and EJ reviewed one of the Night of the Living Dead movies, and Big Al reviewed another movie that starred with R, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Anyway, check them out. So I have to do some horror movies as well. I thought of a few, actually. The one that I was going to focus on was Wolf Creek, but I decided I want to talk about a few of them. Wolf Creek is an Australian film, came out here in the States in 2005. It's directed by MacLean, who went on to do Rogue, which is a killer crocodile movie with Radha Mitchell and Michael Vartan. This movie is set in Australia, and there are three, I believe, English tourists who are tooling around looking at the outback, the Australian countryside. They have some car trouble and find themselves stranded, but then an Australian man in a tow truck comes along and offers to help them. And they take a long ride back to his camp, where he offers to, repair the damage to their vehicle and feed them and give them something to drink. But it isn't long before they find themselves unconscious, and then when they wake up again, they're in some pretty bad situations. I really like this movie a lot because it isn't, one of those masked killer type things where the villain is superhuman and always comes back no matter what and doesn't really have a personality. It's just this implacable killing machine that will come after you no matter what. The killer in this movie is quite human. And therefore more believable and scarier, I think, than, the typical movie monster. Also, I really got attached to the characters in this. Normally, when you have a movie like this, there's like maybe 7 or 8 characters, and then a few of them get bumped off, and then more of them get bumped off, so you're left with like 1 or 2 people who are trying to get away from the killer at the end, and it isn't like that here. There's only 3 characters who you're following, really. So when each of them starts to get permanently physically damaged, I really felt for them. I really felt, oh man, this is bad. They're not going to get out of this. So it was more emotionally involving. Also, the killer, doesn't have any magical, weapons or anything like that. He just uses ordinary tools of torture and murder, what have you. It's a really, really good movie. And it wasn't until the end that I saw some title cards that said that this is actually inspired by a true story. But a lot of what you see in the movie is invented, I think, on the part of the filmmakers because it isn't factually verifiable. There are any witnesses alive, I guess, that could verify any of that. But a lot of people who I've talked to don't really like this movie all that much. I really don't understand why. I think it's a pretty intense movie. Another intense movie, I thought, which doesn't get a lot of attention, is called Catacombs. This is co-directed by Jim Coker and David Elliot, who really haven't done much else besides this. This was a video release that I saw. It never made it to theaters here. The main character is played by Shannyn Sossamon, who is in The Rules of Attraction and also played Heath Ledger's princess love interest in A Knight's Tale. The story is she and her friend, who's played by Pink, the singer Pink, they go to this sort of underground party in Paris. I believe it takes place in Paris. It's literally underground. It's like in a basement somewhere, or in this, what they, basically catacombs, this underground tunneling area, where they go to do maintenance or sewer or something like that. There's a rave down there, or some sort of party where they're drinking and playing music, and they go for a swim in the water, that's probably not very clean. But it isn't long before she finds herself on her own for some reason, and then she begins to wonder whether or not someone's stalking her. Some people will probably find this movie boring or monotonous because a lot of it is her just basically walking back and forth between these empty, dark, dank, grimy corridors, not knowing which way to get out, and not knowing where, someone is going to attack around the corner. I found this pretty, again, emotionally involving because it's a more realistic situation in a lot of horror movies. Added to which, not only is she lost and dark, she's just lost in the dark, but all she's wearing is this flimsy little slip dress that she wore to the party, and so she doesn't have a lot of protection, she's got no weapons, she's got just one tiny little garment of clothing she's wearing walking around, and Shannyn Sossamon is a good actress, so she really, makes you feel that that frustration and that desperation. I like this movie a lot. Haven't seen it in a long time, but when I saw it, I liked it a lot. Now, for Halloween week, obviously, the first thing I thought of was, well, maybe I should review some Halloween movies. I could either diss the Rob Zombie Halloween, which I hate, or I could look at some of the other Halloween movies. Danielle Harris, who is an actress from the Halloween remake, was actually in the previous Halloween series. She was in 4 or 5. And I thought maybe I'd check them out, but I started watching 4 and I was just so bored by it that I turned it off. So instead I'd just like to talk about the original, which is directed by John Carpenter, came out in the late 70s, and of course stars Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. I really am sad that they did a remake of this movie. Some people like it, but to me, remaking Halloween is like remaking some of the classic movies of old, like The Wizard of Oz, or Citizen Kane, or 2001, or It's a Wonderful Life, or Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I mean, there's some movies you just gotta leave alone. They stand on their own. And Halloween is just like the defining slasher movie of the genre. You know, it is the very, very best there. It's a classic of cinema. You know, it's so very effective in its technique. And you know, there's, you know, just no reason to mess with it. Of course, you know, since it is such a popular title, they want to, you know, cash in on the name of it by doing other versions. I figured Rob Zombie would have a little bit more integrity than just, you know, ripping off someone else's thing. Oh, I could do that movie better. No, you can't. No one can do Halloween better than the original, okay? It's like, you know, with The Thing, anyway. They did a remake of The Thing, or it's not really a remake, it's a prequel, but it plays like a remake. You just don't mess with it. There's some movies you just don't mess with it, and Halloween is definitely one of them. Of course, Halloween belongs in that, you know, sort of superhuman killer genre that I'm not really a big fan of. But one movie that sort of comments on that genre is a favorite of mine from 2007 called Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I don't know, a lot of people have seen this, and a few people do think it's okay, but I've seen some positive reviews here on YouTube. It's directed by a guy named Scott Glosserman, who I think went on to do a documentary. But the whole gist of this movie is you've got this guy who is aspiring to be the next infamous masked killer that returns again and again to kill more people in sequels, apparently. His name is Leslie Vernon, of course. He's played by Nathan Baesel, who I'm not really familiar with. But the main character of the film is actually a student journalist who's played by Angela Goethas. I've seen her guest star in shows like 24 and Grey's Anatomy. She and a couple other of her fellow students basically have got a couple of video cameras, and they're making a documentary about this guy who's preparing to assert his own legend and to terrorize the town near where they live by becoming the next masked killer. He has his own distinctive face mask and his own distinctive weapon, which is a sickle, and is going to be making his debut hacking up a remote cabin full of partying teenagers. And I'm watching this the first time and thinking, what are they doing? They're making a movie about this guy? They're making a documentary, interviewing him, asking him questions, watching his preparation? Why don't they stop him? Why don't they call the cops? I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. And then they start talking about other guys, like Jason Voorhees, like Michael Myers, like Freddy Krueger. But they're talking about them in a way that makes them sound like actual, real-life, newsworthy mass murderers like Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, or somebody like that, which tells me that this movie takes place within the world of horror movies. And when he starts explaining all the rules of the horror movies and why you have to have certain elements to your legend, like the Ahab, which is the Dr. Loomis character, the scientist that's trying to warn everybody about the danger. And you have the survivor girl, which is the lone virginal type who stands up to the killer at the end, or is the only survivor, the last victim, whatever. And the way the movie is comprised mostly of documentary footage really helps cut down the budget. But it isn't, strictly speaking, a found footage or a fake doc, because it's bookended by scenes that are shot conventionally like a normal horror movie. It doesn't rely solely on that technique. Fantastic movie. Just a really creative, fantastic movie. Not a lot of gore or creative kills, so if that's what you're looking for in a horror movie, you're probably going to be disappointed, but an incredibly inventive premise and just really exciting. Also, the DVD has a really good amount of extras. It's got a lot of good deleted scenes, and it has a commentary from the cast, which is really exciting as well, talking about the making of the film. Obviously, they did it in a really short period of time, but it's fantastic. It's a terrific movie. I couldn't recommend it more highly. It's one of my favorite movies from that year. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. So yeah, please do check that one out. Oh, I should mention that Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund, makes a cameo in this movie. He has a small supporting role, and then there's Kane Hodder, who played Jason. He has a brief little cameo, and I can't remember the, Zelda Rubinstein, I think is her name, who played the psychic in Poltergeist. She's in as well. Terrific movie. So those are my horror movie recommendations for Halloween. I hope that you take one of those, if not all of them, for your Halloween viewing pleasure, and I will see you again next time. Stay tuned tomorrow for the start of our new theme week. Later.